SOCP EDC back again with another knife video. This is the SOCP Folder. I know that this is not the most current version, but I will get to that in a minute. But I wanted to go ahead and do a video on this because a new version of it is coming out. This version was discontinued. And I just wanted to go ahead and get this down so that anyone who's researching the new SOCP Folder coming out will get an idea of what they're looking at. So SOCP it's the Special Operations Combative Program. That is a self-defense program that's put on by Greg Thompson, who's, I believe he was Special Forces. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments on that. But he has sort of this whole fighting style and technique, and you might be familiar with the SOCP daggers that he does. They come sheathed. This is the folding version of that. He wanted to come out with a folder. And I think in 2018 he did. However, last year it was discontinued. I thought never to be seen again, but it seems like they did bring it back, I guess with a few changes. Now, when it first came out, there were a couple issues with it, and I'm just going to go ahead and point out what the changes were, which sought to correct some of the fixes, and then I'll let you know whether I think it is going to correct some of the fixes. So let's talk about the changes that are made. So first of all, this is a big knife, and I'll get to the size comparison in a minute, but as you can see, it's a G10. This version of it is a G10, and it's a liner lock. Has an interesting ring here for the pocket clip, and you can see Greg Thompson SOCP, and this is a spear point blade. So first of all, the old ones and the new ones both come in a combo edge, which is this. That's the plain edge with the serrations, and a plain edge. I believe that, I know it comes in a plain edge. I think the newer ones will come in a combo edge, but we're still waiting on those to come out. So I do know that Benchmade did discontinue a number of the combo edges recently, but I do believe that the combo edges are coming out for the tactical stuff. So one of the changes is this material here is G10, and on the new one, they're using that new carbon fiber Elite, CF Elite, which basically is their Grivery, which is the plastic like you'd find on a Benchmade Griptilian, except instead of it being glass-filled nylon, it's carbon fiber-filled nylon. The difference is it's a much harder material. You've seen it featured recently on the new version of the CF Elite Bugout. And I actually think CF Elite was developed by Benchmade, not necessarily for the Bugout, but more for its tactical stuff, and because it's a lighter, stronger material, and cheaper, makes things cheaper and more accessible than potentially G10, even though G10 can be cheap in and of itself. So anyway, the new one's going to have that CF Elite material, and it's also going to have two different pocket clips. It's going to come with the ring pocket clip like this, and it's also going to come with a pocket clip that has two points on it and then comes down to a single end, and it looks to be somewhat deep carry, although it won't go to the top of the knife. So it's not a true deep carry in that regard. So the pocket clip, another thing is the liner lock is gone. A lot of people complained about the liner lock in a tactical knife. Why did Greg Thompson choose to use a liner lock? It's not as strong, blah, blah, blah. I don't, I haven't fought with this, but it's pretty solid. I don't think there's any issues with it, with the liner lock here, but, that was one of the criticisms that people had. Now, the new one comes with an axis lock, so the interface here is a little different because they had to make room for the axis lock, so the new one's going to have an axis lock on it. And so the main difference again is the carbon fiber Elite, the pocket clips where you get a choice of pocket clip instead of just this is the default, and the axis lock. The other thing that it comes very different on the new one than this one is the price, because this one originally was retailing, I think, around between $200 and $220, and the new one with the carbon fiber Elite is up on Blade HQ's website. I believe it's going to be released at about $161. So I think the CF Elite is one of the main reasons that they decided to drop the price, is now they're using that material, and they are able to offer it at a much more reasonable price point, because this was a little bit cost prohibitive at about $200, especially when the normal SOCP fixed blade comes in around $100. So now that this is only about $50 or so more, $60 or so more than the SOCP daggers are on their base price, then I think it's a much more reasonable price. So let's go ahead and do some size comparisons, because this is a big honking knife. It's a 4.5-inch knife, and you can really see the size even against the Benchmade Contigo and the Benchmade Griptilian. So you can really see it is a big honking knife with a big honking handle. So you can really see it against the Bugout and the 940. And here is the Spyderco Para 3 and Paramilitary 2. Okay, that's it for the size comparisons. So you can see this is a big knife. Now, that makes sense, number one, because it's a defensive knife and you need to have some reach with it, but it's also, it also just gives you a nice option for the future. Now, I will mention also some of the commonalities with this and the new one that's coming out. I forgot to deal with that before, is the indexing points, I believe, are the same, the glass breaker is the same, the thumb disc is the same, and a lot of the other features remain the same. So let's talk about the good and the bad of this knife. So first of all, the good. The indexing points are great, because when you go to turn this knife around in your hand, being able to index it and have your fingers on these points gives you a nice reference point for how to switch it from, let's say, you know, overhand like this, back around for an underhand reverse grip, and then back around. Now I'm having to come off screen a little bit because it is a large knife and with a large arc, but I think you get the idea. Now, another big plus on this one, I think, is the G10. The G10 feels really good. It has a really nice grip to it, which I think is important for the fact that you're going to be using this as a combat knife, where it's essentially intended to be a self-defense knife. The CF Elite, I haven't, you know, obviously it's not out yet. I can't comment on that, but I will say that, you know, assuming the texture is somewhat similar to the Grivery, which is fiberglass reinforced nylon, I would have to say that the grippiness on the Griptilian is actually a little bit more than the G10 here. So the CF Elite may actually enhance the grippiness. Just a point. Okay. Another thing that's great on here is the pocket clip. This is one of the most ingenious pocket clips I think I've ever seen. A couple of reasons. So, first of all, this gets concealed very easily. Where this can obviously be worn in the pocket, and you know, if it's worn in the pocket, this is what's sticking out. It is full deep carry, and that's fine. But where this really excels is behind the belt. I've never really had a knife that serves well behind the belt, and this one does. So if you are wearing a suit, you know, you're a professional, there are civilian applications for this that you can use, as well as military and police, and therefore, you know, this sort of bridges that gap where if you're wearing slacks or other things in the workplace, or if you're undercover for whatever reason, you need to carry something, this is a great option for that, because it sits behind the belt, and depending on how thick your belt is, it may even cover the entire clip, which is excellent. And then all you do is reach behind the belt and you put your finger down, and this hole here actually allows for you to it gives you a grip inside the hole for you to draw the knife out, which is excellent. The design on this is really ingenious, I have to say, and it works extremely, extremely well. I'm very, very happy with this, and I carry it often, excuse me, behind my belt. So the pocket clip, again, is great. It is a 4-way clip, so it goes... can go on any of these sides, but I will say, and this moves into the next thing that I think is great about it, is that it comes tip down. Now, normally I would say that's not great, because I prefer tip up most of the time, but as I've said before in videos, sometimes tip down is the way to do things. I've said that in my videos for the Microtech Socom Elite. Tip down makes sense on that knife. Tip down also makes sense on this knife, for one very simple reason. If you were to draw this knife out like this, you really have to climb up this knife high in order to open it. Excuse me. your fingers have to climb all the way up the knife and to open it. If you pull it out here from the top, tip down, you're already ready to open it. So tip down makes a lot of sense with this one. The fit and finish on this are great. Everything on here fits perfectly, which, you know, obviously has been an issue in the past for Benchmade. You see that the centering is not 100% perfect, but this has been sort of abused a little bit. This is not a new knife, so you know, that is a consideration. But other than that, the fit and finish are great. So the size of this is another plus. Like I said, it works great, and it's 4.5 inches. And along with that goes the weight. This actually weighs about just a tad over 4.5 ounces, which basically is 1 ounce an inch. And for a knife this size, it's the bigger the knife gets, the harder it is to fit the ounce an inch rule. And so the fact that this gets within 4.5 ounces is, excuse me, or near 4.5 ounces is extremely, extremely good. Now, I think from what I understand, the CF Elite one might be a tad lighter than this. So it actually may be under 4.5 ounces when it comes out. Another thing is the blade coating on this is great. The DLC that Benchmade uses is great. I've had it on a bunch of different knives, and it does protect from corrosion and really prevents from scuffing pretty well. And also, I'll say on the combo edges, on the tactical knives, the serrations that Benchmade does are very, very good. You would use serrations mostly if you're going to get the serrated version, the combo edge version. So obviously plain edge is preferable for most applications, but for in a urban environment where you have to cut rope, maybe cut seat belts, other things like that, the serrated edge is great for that. And so that if you're a police officer or rescue, those are something to keep in mind. Now, the blade coating is necessary because of the blade steel, and we'll get into that in a minute. Okay, so what's bad about this knife? So there's a couple of things, really only a couple of things. So the steel on this is D2, and the steel on the new one is also going to be D2. Now, D2, Benchmade sort of does this a little bit. Sometimes they will do D2 on some, you know, I guess what I would call higher end blades, not necessarily the Griptilian or whatever when I say the not higher end blades. So, you know, they do D2 on their balisongs, which are fairly expensive. They do D2 on some of their tactical knives. I don't really understand why. D2 is a good steel. There's nothing wrong with D2. It's a very good steel, but it's not the most current steel as far as where Benchmade is pricing things in the market. And you know, Benchmade has been using S30V for a long time for a lot of its knives, and they're very good at the heat treat on the S30V, and that is the steel that I think they should have used on this knife, mainly because S30V is going to get you pretty much all the edge retention and everything that you want out of the D2, and it's stainless, whereas the D2 can corrode. Now, what's the problem with it corroding? Well, the main problem with it corroding is that if you're going to have this where it's placed behind the belt, and that's a suggested usage, is that you place it behind the belt, as I've discussed. So, you know, it just is what it is, gentlemen. It gets hot down there. So, you know, the fact that you have something that could potentially corrode. Now, mine hasn't had any issues corroding, but since you have the issue that it may corrode, it's just not great to use that steel on it. And I would have much preferred to see the S30V, since that's Benchmade's standard steel for most of its knives. I would have loved to see S30V, and at the time they were still using 154 cm for their Griptilians, and they could have even used that, and I would have been okay with it. So again, I'm a little bit down on the D2 here. That being said, the biggest issue I have with this is the glass breaker. Now, the glass breaker, you know, I haven't tested it. I assume it works for what its intended purpose, but it's pretty sharp. It's very small, and it comes to a very defined point. Let me see if I can capture that. There you go. And the problem with it is that If you do wear it behind the belt, which is, again, a suggested carry for this by Benchmade and by Greg Thompson, then you should be aware that this will start to rub against the inside of your slacks or whatever you're wearing, and it starts to shred, just like pocket clips sometimes do to your pockets. It'll shred that area, and eventually it'll come weak, and you'll develop holes in your pants and your slacks. So that's just something to be aware of. Obviously, if you're using tactical pants or anything like that, it's less of an issue. Although I will say that one of my pairs of 511s had some problems with that same issue of rubbing and developing a weak spot, despite the fact that those are tactical pants. So the glass breaker, I think, on this, just because of how far down the knife goes, so if this was a half-inch shorter, I don't think this glass breaker would be a problem with that type of carry. But because this is so long, I think it has, I think it does have that problem. Now, I will say that I am a shorter person. I'm about 5'5". So if you have someone who's 6'4" or something like that, the extra length on the pants that they have probably will not be affected by the glass breaker, because you're going to have more longer material. So anyway, that's just the bad. So overall, I think this is a great option. Obviously, I am not a self-defense guy. I'm not advocating for your use of this knife in self-defense, but if you're thinking of picking this up for self-defense or some other application, I can recommend this knife, and I do recommend that if you plan on using it as a self-defense knife, you go and check to see if one of those SOCP classes, because Mr. Thompson offers SOCP classes, see if they're available in your area. Maybe get one of the trainers and train on this, because there is nothing more important than training. No amount of blades or anything else is going to help you if you don't know how to use it. In any event, that's my little rant. Obviously, also check your local laws here. That's the other bad with this, is 4.5 inches. This is not going to be able to be used in every jurisdiction. Just be aware of that. Anyway, I'll go ahead and end this video. Go ahead and leave a like in the comments if you have any experience with this, or have maybe saw a blade show or something else, SHOT Show or something else, the new SOCP coming out, and you have any experience with it. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you think. And I look forward to actually possibly reviewing the new one as well in the future. But thank you all for watching.